Hello and welcome to another episode of Power On Podcast, the Bebop years.
Oh gosh.
I'll keep on trying to think of something. I am one of your hosts, Sailor, and with me is the wonderful worry wart that is Sushi B. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I am ready to talk about Chessmaster Wily here.
Oh boy, yes, episode 14, Bohemian Rhapsody.
I do feel like I've heard that name somewhere before. Is it not familiar to you as well?
Chessmaster Hex?
No, that Bohemian Rhapsody. Like I feel like I've heard it somewhere before.
Right.
Like
I don't know. Couldn't tell you.
It seems like it's something we should probably have a pretty good cause of it.
Right. It's not even close to their best song, but that's beside the point.
No, but it's probably their most famous.
Yeah, true.
But, like most likely.
We Are the Champions is pretty high up there too.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So, anyways, Prophet was a Prophet song. The Prophet song. I actually really like that one a lot. But episode 14. Now back into the groove of things, and we step into something of, I don't know how to describe how I feel about this episode. Like, I really don't like it.
Yeah, okay.
I don't. I don't know. It's a sort of Shaggy Dog story without really being a Shaggy Dog story, you know?
I find this episode to be rather more convoluted than necessary.
And I think it's on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I would, just given what it is, mm-hmm. I kind of wonder if that wasn't done on purpose. I get vibes of, what is it? Speak for the Devil. You know, episode 6.
Okay.
For some reason, and I'm not 100% certain why. And just something about the energy I get from it. It's kind of similar. Yeah. What are some things you like about this episode?
I like that we get a little bit more explanation about the gates. Like, you know, it is kind of cool to at least get. It's not abundantly clear still, kind of. Like, it's still a little bit messy. But it gives us a little bit of backstory on just the idea of the space travel and how these came up to be about and how it's improved the transportation services around the galaxy. So I kind of like that.
It is nice to have that. It's kind of nice that there's this, how to put it, not like quick dive into everybody being on the same page. Mm-hmm. There's this little bit of you know, as I mentioned, it's like, it's Faye's idea to have them all try to do this as a competitive sort of thing. Before they finally pull their resources together to try to figure it out. Because they capture all these different members of these plots, but they don't, they don't capture the brains behind the plan.
Right.
So that leads them to going to try to find who it is after they've gotten these little chess pieces.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do like that too, that they're not really working together so much as in competition, but then realize they have to work together.
Right.
This is kind of like a fun playfulness between the three of them. That camaraderie, but just sort of that, we're still also a bit in competition here. Yeah, I like that. I like that dynamic. I do. Faye has my favorite line in this episode, where she just pokes Ed in the face and said, "You dead?"
As I say, Ed gets a bit more attention this episode. And it's not distracting. I mean, there is the silly parts in it, of course, but yeah, is able to kind of keep things moving along for the most part, and then has a chess partner to entertain and play games with.
Yep. I like the scene with Jet going to the Gate Corporation headquarters.
I do as well.
Yeah, and how he's playing dumb, and hey, there's no smoking in here, but he's got that little transmitter in there.
Right.
So I like that little bit of almost like spy detective work that he does there. So I like that. And Jet seems to have a few episodes now where he's kind of meeting someone of high rank in various different areas across the galaxy. Where he's having conversations with people, and he's kind of that's one of the aspects as well of Jet that we haven't really touched upon, is just his negotiation skills and finding that leverage where possible.
Yeah, because the other two,
we had in episode 3 right, with
the casino owner.
Yeah,
because I don't think the other two would be so good for that.
Yeah, but it's cool to see like Jet does have skills with that, right? Like he knows how to push these high ranking individuals, and he's kind of playing it as if he still was part of the police force.
Yeah, he does lean on that in ways that it's like I know what you're trying to do. Like,
like he knows you're right. Like the shady deals and stuff that happens, he's fully aware of. But because he's kind of in that gray area of morality now, to a degree, like based on his profession now, so he can kind of be a little bit more cheeky than he might have once been.
Right.
And he's probably not quite as naive as before. As I seem to recall in his next more focused episode.
Right, where it's like, oh, okay. He is a bit bright-eyed, bushy-tail.
But I like it. It's a nice little part of the episode.
Anything else that you...
Oh, wow, you're dried out already?
Like I said, I don't like this episode. I really don't.
So I was pausing to see if you had something else there.
Yeah, like I guess
I don't mind the chess game. Like it's kind of fun to watch Ed be silly, but it's still within a good context here. Like it's not too overboard. And I'm playing with Hex. And before we started recording, I said that the silly line is like, "Oh, I'm either playing with a genius or a complete moron or a complete fool, whatever." And Ed kind of personality-wise, we still don't quite know. Is Ed a genius? Which we have seen flashes of that. Obviously, Ed does have some pretty talented skills, but Ed also seems to be incredibly naive and potentially foolish about things too.
Right. I mean, also helps that she's like, what, 10, 11?
Right. Very youthful. So.
Right.
So, pretty fair to say she has abilities that the average child of that age most likely wouldn't have. But still, that innocence is definitely there.
Right.
In theory, I like the idea of the junk heap stuff from the
outside.
In theory. Yes,
yeah,
but then as soon as we get there, I'm like, oh, this is, no thanks.
It's just loser nonsense.
Right.
Like, oh man, rebel against the wrongs and enjoy freedom. And it's like...
Sort of 60s revolution again kind of thing.
Well, then it's like, it's just like you're going nowhere. And I don't know. To me, that's just...
We do get the three old guys again, though.
Yeah, we do get that. Yeah, I guess that is a nice thing to see them again. Yeah, but it's just I just don't like that. And it's not to say that it gets like glamorized or anything. It got glamorized far too much in our own little timeline here. But I think you see that to very strong degrees of the echoing of that nowadays. And I just not to say that, we got to be super serious all the time, blah, 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 and stuff. It's just, I don't know. To me, it is like, kind of similarly with like creativity or that sort of thing. The concept of total freedom means to this is just to kind of do nothing and just sort of like be around, hang out. And to me, that's a very selfish way to live, I feel like. But that's just from my viewpoint. So it's just really annoying to me. It's like, we're just gonna do our own thing, man. It's like, we're living in what that does. It's like they don't call it the boomer menace on the internet for nothing. That's just my agitation with this episode.
I don't mind the idea of Jonathan in this, just because he's a sort of rival bounty hunter that we've seen some glimpses of little bits here and there of this, but this is probably our most I've lost the word I want, but just like biggest sort of competitor up
competition.
To this point. Yeah, I guess up to this point, really.
Yeah, because Fatty really doesn't. He's like there for a moment, and then he just kind of gives up.
He
providing information more.
Yeah, he's not really a competition necessarily.
Right.
Whereas, this one is a bit more of that. There's negative connotation to the Jonathan character, right? Like he's obviously out to collect this, and he's willing to one up on Jet and the other Bebop members. So yeah, I didn't mind that. I thought that was a nice little bit too, because it is a bit odd that we haven't run across more competitive bounty hunters kind of up to this point, since there seems to be plenty, as Big Shot has been telling us that there's X number out in the galaxy. So
they're all just sitting around the restaurants waiting for Decker.
I guess maybe wait for that big spoil to just fall into their
lap. Now you're getting it. Yeah, it's rhyming. It's they're no different than the society they don't kind of want to be a part of.
Yeah, could well be. That's probably
I will say that's not a negative per se, but just I don't mind the concept for Chessmaster Hex.
Yeah,
of this
me too.
Person who's had a plan in place, and then, as Jet says, 50 years is a long time.
Couldn't execute it.
Well, not that he couldn't, but that he waited so long for this, and by that point, he's senile. He's 98 or something.
98.
So, he is no longer who he was.
No more vengeance in his body.
Right. He's just wanting to play a game, which, that's fine.
It's different.
It doesn't bother me in that way. It's one way to look at, you get it to an age where you just kind of want to have fun and whatnot. And it's just kind of, once again, it needles my irritation for and I get it, 98, really hard to be doing a whole lot of stuff. I know I'll never see 98. So what do I have to say about that?
Yeah.
But, I just come on. gotta be something else. No, he just kind of shuffles off, plays chess all day.
Yep.
50 some years.
Yeah, that's probably I'm probably good with that. And if you want to move into those middling and then negatives and or.
Mm-hmm. I'd say, yeah, I kind of mentioned a couple there. What's some negatives on your end or middling?
I think as we were saying, like I'm not that keen on the whole like the Bohemian junk heap or whatever. Right, the junk heap thing is just kind of silly, and it's interesting that we've got Chessmaster Hex who's just kind of over there, and it just seems the people that have kind of floated out there and have this free will of their own, right? They don't have to, no policing, no government, no taxes, all this stuff that Jet's like listing off.
Right.
But this safe haven has just like kind of become I can't find the word I want to explain, but like he had obviously vengeance and a vision of what he wanted to do, and this stuff has just been kind of building around him, and they're not really, obviously they're not there to support him or anything. It just kind of like manifested and just became something completely not necessarily what his intentions were. But as he's aging, he's probably not even aware of a bunch of this stuff that's just kind of been built around him. And it's just kind of like, that's just kind of, I don't know, it's odd. Like, it's just, yeah, it's not a particularly interesting or enjoyable aspect of this. And like, oh, okay, whatever, they're high on, drugs or whatever. It's like, okay, sure, whatever.
Yeah, it's just something I've never really found to be an interesting thing. It's just like, okay, all right. That's really all I've got to say about it. It's like, okay, I'm not impressed with it one way or the other. And just looking at it, and I get that that's not everything, or that's not everyone, and whatnot, but just it doesn't seem like a place I'd want to live. That would make me miserable to be in just this, like, even without the, because to me that's just like they're just numbing themselves to living life to just kind of be like, I get it. You don't want to be a part of the society that's going on here because it sucks. Like, I get that. But if you move your pieces off the board, then you have there is literally no skin in the game for you. So, like, okay, all right. It's like somebody who's in a position of power that steps down or something. It's like, in one hand, I kind of get it. I kind of feel like respect. Okay, I get that you're stepping down because you don't feel like you're doing an adequate enough job. However, A, who fills that spot? B, when you step out of that spot, you no longer have any power in that sort of position. That's not your, like, you can't, because far too often what happens is they'll step down and like they'll start chirping about, oh, well, this and this and this. Right, it's like, right. Shut up. Like, you had all this opportunity, and all of a sudden now is the time you want to start talking about it. It's like, no. Like,
well, it's obviously it's counterintuitive to the process, but it's sort of just, they've probably dealt with enough heat and stuff as it is, and now it's like, oh, I can just kind of razz the new person that's in there.
Right.
Give them a piece of my mind, right, for not upholding my standard or fulfilling the profitability of this organization or whatever. And it's like, if you're going to step down, you should be moving into that advisory role or just be completely removed and done with it.
Well, it's like, I think of it else in the same way of, if you and I have some sort of issue, if we have some sort of like something that comes up, some sort of bickering, what have you, something where it's like, hey, I don't like this sort of thing. No, a little different, just kind of chit chatting through mics and whatnot. But like in person, if you're working with somebody and whatnot, you don't put them on blast out in fucking public. Like you go privately and you pull them aside and be like, hey, what's going on here? Like, it's just, and it's like this is kind of like that. It's we're gonna put society on blast by kind of
doing nothing,
cutting by thumbing our noses at it, or you get the like
abstain.
With that, or Alan Watts had a thing about like talking about like the person who's like the outsider, and it gets glorified, and it's like, it's not that you glorify it, it's there to just so you can understand an outside perspective kind of thing. And it's, that's all it is. It's a perspective, not the word from on high. And it's just, that's what it feels like. What happens is like people get ensnared by the, oh, well, it's the counter, it's the outer, it's totally thing. It's like, no, stop. Please be a little bit more.
Well, I think like our media has kind of always portrayed that as sort of a moral high road or something, right? If you think of like westerns, the living out on the frontier, but not like following the rules and making up your own rules and things like that. So like it's definitely been in sort of popular culture for a long time,
right?
To be that way. So that's probably where it gets a little more glorified, in the idea of living outside the rules and only stepping in at times to kind of correct, what you presume as the problem or the issue, and then stepping back out. It's like, well, you're staying out on that fringe because you don't want to really have to deal with this most of the time, and you're just using that martial law or whatever to kind of just make adjustments as you see fit, and then hoping that people will follow along with that.
Right, yeah, and it's just like, that's only a temporary thing. And it doesn't even have to be outsiders per se. Like, I can think of, plucking from Roman history with Sulla and him taking over and just kind of slaughtering a whole bunch of his enemies to the point to where he didn't even have to have bodyguards as a dictator. This is like the
there was no one left.
Well, no, there's just a wave. This is the wave right before Caesar.
Okay.
And so he even points out, like, Caesar allegedly, that he's like, many a Marius runs in him kind of thing, which is, Marius was his was Sulla's political opponent. But here's the guy who just kind of cuts through everything. He marches on Rome. Kind of a naughty thing to have done, saying everybody just takes the lesson of, oh, that's how you do things. So if you have the outsider who comes in and just kind of goes, do this, do this, what lessons are getting learned from that? People growing up are going to say, oh, that's how you do things. And so they're not going to just take what you say verbatim and then just go through and be like, yes, the same things that are being said this previous generation, I'm going to continue. No, they're going to come up with their own thoughts and ideas, but then take the same lessons of what was effective and then crank it up further. And it's just like, annoying.
I have another thing that's very, very odd in here.
Okay.
And it could be interpreted as sort of that middling or negative. For all of the issues that this crew has had with collecting bounties, with bounties getting away, bounties dying, any number of things that can go wrong seems to continually go wrong.
Yeah.
And now they get a golden ticket, basically. And I appreciate this sort of moral compass that a character like Jet has, and sort of, you know, his vision here of like, okay, this guy is harmless now, just leave him alone. Don't really want him to now get in trouble for this work. It's not worth it. But at the same point, too, you know, when I'm thinking, when you brought up like Mishmash and stuff, and him kind of like, you know, he's broken free from like the shackles of duty and so forth. It's funny because this happens more often than not, where it's like, you know, as a person, you see that and you're like, oh, you know, I can relate to that, I can appreciate that, but it's also a bit overplayed in several episodes, and in this one especially, when you're like, whoa, they could like solve all their problems right now, like financially at least.
Well, at least some of them,
yeah,
kind of thing. But this
is thinking more financially, right? Not obviously their emotional issues,
right,
running from the past and all this stuff, but their immediate financial issues can be taken care of. And there's no negotiation to at least be like, give me a little cut and leave the guy alone or whatever.
Right.
So that's a little bit, like unbelievable.
Yeah, the only thing I could possibly think is that Jet knows that if he asks money, it could blow back as a, okay, you guys want some money to keep quiet? How long until you start asking for more money? Oh, okay, a couple months. All right. And that's when
I guess the idea that the corporation could still be on their tail or something.
Right. Send ninja assassin, space ninja assassin.
Maybe, right?
Yes.
Yep.
So, like, that's the only counter, not the only, but that's one counter I could kind of think of, would be the way that they would play it and be like, oh, well, we could.
But at that same notion, right? Like, it's 3 people that know this. Well, technically 4 with Ed, but so they could put a bounty on them and get them hunted down. Like, if even if they, like, how can this CEO be willing to trust 3 bounty hunters to be quiet about this?
Well, that's why I said that, because like that would be the only way to be like, oh, okay, we know about this, but we don't want anything from it. Like, that would be the only way to maybe possibly. But even then, yeah, this episode creates a lot of problems in that, where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess it is nice how they explain the laundered, 2 accounts with blind transactions that couldn't be traced. It's like, oh, gee, not like we see that anytime, anywhere, or anything.
Yep.
Those whatever they have, Bitcoin-ish sort of things, not necessarily Bitcoin, but that FTX, Binance.
No, that's all 24-hour stock market now, right? No control, no checks and balances.
Oh, you would like to think, but there is control. Just with the people running it.
Well, yeah, I suppose. And I mean, I know you can say the same thing about the stock market, right? There's insider trading as much as, politicians and CEOs. Like, no, there isn't. And it's
absolutely not. No.
Far too often can we find examples of, you seem to have sold out about 2 months before everything really bombed out. Interesting.
Very peculiar timing.
They know what's coming down the pipeline. Just like, oh, we're going to not make that, that profit margin this quarter and this and that. And, oh, we know what kind of changes are coming. Like, there's insider trading.
Right.
But, yeah. I don't have too much more I can say about this episode. I don't love it. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say, "Oh, yeah, it's amazing." It's like, it's one you gotta really get into. But it is on my lower half of episodes, but it's not quite like at the bottom.
It's certainly one of my least favorites. I'm not too keen on this episode. It's kind of like, And it's not, and like I said, it's not like it's even bad or anything. It's just, I just don't, I don't really like the setting. Not that Chessmaster Hex is, um, not interesting or anything, but I think that there's just certain, like there's an episode towards the end, Brain Scratch, that has not quite the same, but similarities to Hex, that I think is a much more interesting episode than what this one ends up being. So.
Do you think, this will be my last point and I'm ready to wrap up, but do you think when Jet says to the CEO, and he says something to the effect of, Ed would be unhappy to lose her new friend, chess player.
Right.
And then the very end of the episode seems to imply this guy's passing. So is this just playing back into the irony of all of the decisions that are made and the ultimate endpoints being not falling in their favor, kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I would lean towards that.
Mm-hmm. Like they had a chance to get that money. The guy died anyways. Like all this stuff just didn't play in their favor whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Down on their luck, never going to work out.
I mean, that's sometimes how it goes.
Well, more than sometimes in this franchise.
That's a lot of time how it goes.
Most of the time.
So yeah, it's onwards to bounties, and you're pushing this off on me to start.
Yeah, we're gonna flip flop now. So.
Yep. So.
12 million bounty, was it?
That is correct. So, yeah, so it's 12 million bounty. I'm gonna give this like a 2 million.
Okay.
Like I said, I really don't like this episode. It's just not my thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm just gonna go with a 5. Like I said, it's this episode could fluctuate depending on the others. Like as we're going through, I don't think we're gonna probably wrap up and try to rank everything or whatever by the end, but I would still imagine this would be in the bottom half. Just maybe its placement might shift a little bit up or a little bit down from where I'm kind of thinking it is now.
Gotcha. All right. I guess any last words?
Nope. I am ready to move on.
Okay, then yeah. If you've seen this episode, you disagree or agree with us. Maybe it's one of those that it's a little hazy for you for one reason or another. Well, let us know. And yeah, thanks for listening. For Sushi B and myself. See you, Space Cowboy.